Welcome, guys, to one of my first podcasts at the Ron Talks. Today, we will be talking about a very controversial topic, and that is colonialism. Now, before we get started off, I would like to introduce one of my guest speakers. Would you like to introduce yourself?
Thanks for having me, Rohan. My name is Natalie Batty.
Perfect, Natalie. Now, before we get started, would you like to introduce some of your professions on what you're taking in the near future?
I'm currently a student at Western University and I'm taking social work.
Perfect. So social work is a really good program to have to voice your opinion on a topic like this one. Now, starting off with colonialism, it has been around since time. England is one of the main branches of where colonialism has started and really came from. Back then, it was mostly called the British Empire, and the British Empire had colonized many nations. One of the largest suits was India. Now, when British had colonized India around like the late 18th century, they had colonized them for over 100 years. That was a pretty long time. And when they had colonized them, there was many Hindustani revolutionists such as Gandhi and Shahid Bhagat Singh who had stepped up to the plate to fight off colonialism, but they could not fight off the Great British Might. There was many things that the British had done, either positive or negative. And Natalie, would you like to explain and elaborate on what were the positive and the negative perks of colonialism?
Well, for starters, Rohan, colonialism has impacted India socially, politically, economically, both negatively and positively. I'm first going to start off with some positives that colonialism has brought into India. For starters, the Europeans defended India against their enemies and gave them weapons to defend themselves. The Europeans brought in new technology, provided tools for farming, and introduced new crops. They also built more infrastructure such as medical facilities, communication networks, schools, and established plantations.
I see. So what we can grasp from here is that colonialism has done a lot of terrible things, but a lot of positive things at the same time. Now, from what I understand is that the things that have taken place in the past can still be applied in today's day, and that is post-colonialism. Since the British had introduced many infrastructures, such as the Great Taj Mahal Hotel, which was created by the British rule, and all the railway stations, such as those stations are still active till this day. Therefore, India sort of benefited in a way of technological advancements and infrastructures. Now, the British did help India defend off some land in a sense. Now, that could benefit India off till this day as well, because India had a lot of conflicts going on, such with the Hindus and the Muslims. And the British, they came in and they kind of broke it down into sections. Although India may be a little bit broken down till this day, I still believe that it did go for the benefit of the doubt, because Hinduism and Islam are both major dominant religions. And if they were to be collided together in just one great nation, who knows how would it really ends. So at the same time, colonialism has done great things that still lead to this day. Now, talking about the negative aspects of colonialism when it comes to what it has done to India as a whole. Now, let's think about it. Most people in India are dirt poor, and the reason why, it's because the economy level is high, but the population rate is really high to the point where there's not that many job opportunities that could be provided. Even the essay that I have recently wrote in the document I've watched, which was Born into Brotels, that was an amazing documentary. I really do find it to be a credible documentary. This documentary that I watched was showed in a sense that there are females being forced to perform certain actions to provide themselves and their kids a living, because there's not that many job opportunities in India, and this is because India was thrown back because of colonialism. So colonialism, whatever took place back then, the slavery has really set India back as a whole, which leads to many Indian citizens to less job opportunities. Therefore, there are some females out there that have to lead themselves to doing prostitution, since that's their only way of income. There are many people in India that have been affected by this. Even Maharaja Ranjit Singh, the Sikh King Empire, he had all of his luxuries and all of his jewels stolen away. He was a historic foundation. He was a wonderful man for the Sikh Empire. But once he was betrayed and he was sorry to his death, There was nothing much left of him, and that still affects Sikhs till this day. Now, this is colonialism that only has taken place in India, and it still largely affects India till this day. Now, let's move on to colonialism that took on in Africa. Now, King Leopold II colonized Africa, since that was the last section he was allowed to take during, I think it was the Paris Conference. And in this conference, they discussed of which nation could take which, and which nation could take which. Now, Congo wasn't really a good nation to pick on. It's because it was in the middle of Africa, and since it's in the middle of Africa, it's hard to export the resource. You have to pass through so many more customs. And King Leopold, the guy he did not have the luxury to have a voice for himself and be able to farm at another rate. So therefore, he took Congo as a whole and he kept it as himself. And King Leopold himself, he has done many bad and malicious things. The slavery, everything that has taken place in Congo is very terrible. And till this day, people in Congo are dirt poor. The poverty levels are still rising there. Even HIV has become a major concern in Congo. And the whole reason behind that is because half of this nation was put under slavery. And then once they're put under slavery, they're controlled under a whole another government. And even though colonialism may have some positive aspects with it, we really do gotta understand that these are lives that we're toying with over here. And these lives are still suffering till this day. It is pretty sad of what colonialism has led to, which is post-colonialism itself. Now, would you like to touch up on what colonialism really has brought to Africa, what the future of Africa may be? Do you think that Africa will continue itself to being a whole continent in poverty, or would it be able to grow out of its poverty?
I believe that just like any other nation that has been colonized, there is a motivation and transition into becoming a stronger country eventually. Just like India, it's just with time, from all of the drawbacks and implications that the colonialism has done for countries such as Africa and India, I believe that there just needs to be a cleanse, which will take some time, but I feel that eventually countries will be back on their feet, and they'll be able to become an establishing company.
Perfect.
Sorry, I meant to say country.
Perfect. Yeah, absolutely. I truly do agree with that statement. It will be a certain amount of time when Africa will be able to go back on its own roots. I just feel like it needs some independence and it needs to be left alone. They need to build off of their own economy. Now, this is very controversial in many topics because both China and India are getting targeted for having a rapidly growing economy. Now, it sounds nice. China's economy is growing rapidly, but the problem is they're exploding gas emissions. Now, that's another topic for another day, but generally, the whole thing about countries developing, that really cannot become a thing anymore. It's because back then, people did not care much about the environment. Nowadays, it has become much more of a larger concern. And if there's nations out here just exploding gas emissions, it should not be fair to those. Say, for an example, back in the day, the British were allowed to exploit gas emissions all they wanted to. And now, all of a sudden, since environmental change has become a concern, countries like India and China are not prohibited from exploiting their gas emissions. So it's a very controversial topic of where it could go, because it's like, hey, if you got some, why can't I get some? It's about who gets the share of the pie whatsoever. But post-colonialism as a whole, it has benefited and has non-benefited the world society as a whole. Even like referring back to the book of that I read was Into Thin Air by John Collier. It was an amazing book whatsoever. But I still do believe that the fact that Nepal's main source of income comes from Mount Everest is disheartening. And the reason why I find it to be disheartening is that because it's the Shipa's sacred mountain. It's their sacred mountain, therefore it should be left to them and it should not be touched. Even though they do accept people to come, it's not like they're denying people to climbing their mountain. They just want people to take cautious and pay their respects towards the mountain whatsoever. if colonialism did not the British as well did colonize Nepal. Let's just get that out of the way real quick. But if Nepal wasn't colonized from the start, them today in today's society, they wouldn't be in dirt poverty as they are. And if they weren't in poverty, they wouldn't have to rely on just one main source of income. And that one main source of income is Mount Everest. And they could keep their mountain sacred. People will still be able to climb it, but people would have to take cautions of climbing it. The Sherpa community would have more control over their mountain, but they can't since it's their main source of income. And the reason why it's their main source of income, it's because they've been colonized. And colonization, even though it took place somewhere around 20 to 50 years ago, it still affects society till this day, which is really disheartening. It's disheartening that what society has become as a whole over just things that have been done in the past. It's like we always, there's that one saying that we forget about the past and think about the future. But how can we forget about the past when all of these lives were lost? And all these lives were lost still affect today's society, today's income, the way countries work as a whole. You know, this is a very emotional topic to talk about. Even the media clip that I've done today, I have mixed various sounds together, such as the Civil War, African slavery, and such as the Indian slavery. I've mixed them all together and created them over just one theme, and that was colonialism and how it integrated into post-colonialism. And I'm not gonna lie, I may sound a bit, childish for this, but I did cry making the remix clip. And the reason why, it's because it kills me from the inside that humans have grown like this, and as a whole, for what we have become, it's just disheartening. It's disheartening on how society has grown as a whole. But let's not get off topic. Colonialism is what it is. It's something that we cannot end, and it's something that will gradually continue. Now, before we get off, Natalie, would you like to add any ending comments to what you think about colonialism? What you think the future would be? Do you think that colonialism would have its end to post-colonialism would have its end to it, or do you think society will still have that embedded in with them?
I feel that colonization in general obviously left
a mark.
Definitely,
Yep.
definitely left a large mark globally for individuals living in many different countries that were affected by colonialism.
Absolutely.
And saying that.
Yep, saying that what colonialism has done to society. Yep.
Saying that, I'm sorry.